Seeing as how everyone who just clicked on this is awesome, especially you know who you are, I'd venture a guess you've all been invited to a party or two. But from time to time, no matter how important the gathering is, you're just a bit tardy. Whether it be the traffic jam from your Amazon Waste app, you being fashionably late, or there was just a more thrilling funeral to attend, you arrive well after the party is dying down. If you could turn that concept into a television show, it would be Agatha all along. A spin-off of a Disney Plus exclusive which came out when the world was still rationing toilet paper. It had been so long since this project was announced, not to mention the 4 name changes, that the few people who had even heard about its release were shocked that it was real. But does the old adage better late than never apply, or is it just another steaming turd being shoveled onto the conveyor belt that Marvel is apparently yet to turn off? Picking up about 3 years after the events of WandaVision, holy shit, it's been that long already? We join Agatha serving out her days in Scarlet Witch's mental prison as Agnes, a detective in the small town of Westview, New Jersey. Normally I'd approve of the representation, but considering part of Madam Web took place in my state earlier this year, I believe we've suffered enough.
Jane Doe, dispatch was tipped off by an anonymous call.
She is dead though, isn't she, Herb?
Oh, she's really most sincerely dead.
Really? I just rolled my eyes so hard I could see my brain. Stealing lines from The Wizard of Oz should be considered a crime punishable by being crushed by a goddamn house. She is handed a catalog card from a library book which is found on the body that is currently the only lead. Walking the perimeter, Agnes comes across a possible second piece of evidence and immediately contaminates it by raw dogging it with her bare hand. I mean, I get she's not actually a detective, but she believes that she is. You'd think she'd at least put on a glove, especially considering she's wearing them in the very next scene. She goes to investigate the body and her partner seems concerned.
You don't seem like yourself.
She responds very snappily.
This unidentified woman lying dead in a crick has just got me down in the dumps.
Wait, what did you just say?
Lying dead in a crick?
What the fuck is a crick? Do you mean creek?
That's not how you're supposed to say it! You said it weird!
Well, weird pronunciations aside, a tongue-in-cheek, or I guess tongue-in-chick intro plays revealing this is effectively a show within the show. This gimmick would be interesting if we hadn't already seen it almost 4 years ago. That coupled with the marketing makes us fully aware that this isn't going to last. So the longer they drag it out, the more time is wasted. Agnes arrives at the local library with the catalog card from the murder and immediately cuts everyone in line.
Official police business. Excuse me.
I'm not really sure where they think this is, but I've literally never seen a line this long at any library ever. After Agnes has fun harassing this poor civil servant.
Well, thanks a bunch for your help, Dottie. Where were you last night between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m.?
She forces the librarian to look up the book title. Look, as a guy who's done his fair share of backronyms for live stream titles, I'm gonna give credit where it's due. This was solid work.
Dialogue and Rhetoric, Known History of Learning and Debate by Andrew Ugo.
Turns out the book was stolen 3 years ago, but there's plenty of copies left. Or are there?
There was a fire.
Everything destroyed.
Every last copy.
The following morning, Agnes arrives at the station, and as she's being debriefed about the situation, in saunters the real selling point of this show.
Here I am.
Vidal, being played by an entire generation's dry-humored wet dream, Aubrey Plaza. Agnes is less than thrilled, to say the least.
Teamwork makes the
Eat
dream.
my ass, Chief.
Language.
After the two go back and forth in a metaphorical dick-measuring contest,
You want to take control of my investigation?
If you want to be in control, you can be.
Cat fight.
Agnes decides to take the second piece of evidence down to a pawn shop to get answers.
North American, New England maybe, late 17th century I guess.
And discovers that it's a locket with a tuft of hair inside.
You looking to sell it, Agnes?
It's really amazing how she was willing to pick it up without gloves but didn't bother to investigate any further. It's as if no one on the set was interested in questioning anything. After a late night at the station, Agnes goes home to her empty suburban house, which honestly I'm shocked isn't full of cats. She oddly feels the need to check in on a vacant bedroom where we see an engraving of the name Nicholas Scratch. Anyone who knows the comics is aware that this is not only Agatha's son, but the father of the Salem 7 and invented by the late greats George Perez and Len Wein. So the odds are strong we're gonna see a couple of deceased legends have their legacies shit on in this show. Agnes hears a knock at the door and wouldn't you know it, Wet Dream has arrived to chat with her despite the fact they hate each other.
Has the suspect been seen in the last 24 hours? Only on TikTok.
It was at this moment that Dark Hour realized this show's word assemblers do not understand the concept of humor. so he's in for a really rough time with this one. Wet Dream begins poking holes in Agnes's perception of reality.
Do you remember why you hate me? Are you hiding evidence?
But before she could break through, Agnes hears someone rummaging around upstairs.
Hey! What are you doing?
A chase ensues, and this is actually the first genuinely funny moment as a middle-aged Catherine Hahn attempts to convince us that she knows how to run. Just as the perp is about to get away, he's hit by a car driven by Kitty Foreman.
Way to go, dumbass!
Agnes is then able to arrest the extremely flamboyant-looking suspect.
Where did you get that outfit? No, why did you get that outfit?
Turns out he's not in the system, mostly because the system doesn't actually exist. So Agnes needs to go interrogate him.
What do you know about this?
Nothing! Nothing!
Tell me who she is.
I don't know!
Tell me what happened to her!
What are you talking about? These are just flowers!
What?
And Flamer begins chanting in Latin before being thrown in jail. In order to try and make sense of the senseless,
you're shit out of luck.
Agnes heads to the coroner's office where she begins to piece things together.
Hair the color of scarlet.
As the picture becomes clearer, she is once again visited by Wet Dream, who finally guides her out of the dream world. Now, I've been pretty apathetic towards this show up to this point, and that's for good reason. This first 2/3 or so of an episode wasn't terrible, just kind of strange. If divorced from the rest of the show, I could say this isn't even close to the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, I did review The Acolyte after all. The campy self-awareness, the mind-bending to make Agnes question things, and even using all her forms from WandaVision in reverse to represent breaking free was done decently. But as we're in danger of believing that Marvel might be onto something here, it turns out to be a rehash of what happened in WandaVision, just not done nearly as well. It was some weird approach to trick us into seeming different, only to be immediately abandoned within the same episode. I think it would have been fun if over the course of several episodes we saw Agatha attempt to re-emerge. Hell, with WandaVision, no one had any fucking clue what was going on until episode 3. But nah, just move on as quickly as possible, which has been the MCU MO for quite a while now. So now I wonder how the real show is gonna start.
Naked grandma!
Naked, huh?
Well then. As was to be expected on the Disney streaming service, we immediately get an eyeful of geriatric ass. As she talks to her neighbor who looks suspiciously like her partner from earlier, she starts to realize that the townspeople have just been feeding into her delusion.
Librarian, chief of police, jeweler.
And that none of the investigation was real.
Almost like you got bit by the true crime bug.
Remembering who she is, she storms into the house, quickly realizes she no longer has her powers, and remembers the events of WandaVision. She then rediscovers Flamer. Wait a minute. Disney actually had her lock the gay kid in the closet? Seriously? I'm not even mad here. This is so on the fucking nose, I'm just gonna move on. It's at this time that the front door explodes and in comes... Well, hello. Sorry, just give me a few seconds here. But while I'm occupied, here's her beating the shit out of Agatha. Okay, I'm back. Turns out Wet Dream is the Green Witch Rio Vidal, who is a completely made-up character for this show, so I can't even tell you anything about her. From what I can gather, she really hates Agatha and has wanted her dead for a really long time. It makes very little sense as to why she pulled her out of her mental torture then. Just saying. As she's about to finish the job, Agatha pulls a fucking Dragon Ball Z and convinces Wet Dream that in order to really test herself, she needs to wait until Agatha is at her most powerful. Wet Dream reluctantly agrees, but warns her that she will likely be encountering the Salem 7, who I already mentioned earlier, which gives them 7 chances to fuck up. From the visionary showrunner who brought you the moderate success WandaVision and Agatha all along, as well as being involved with these 2 pieces of shit, comes the next spin-off that absolutely no one asked for that definitely isn't going to justify its insanely bloated budget. In a world where death lurks down every hole and people cling to life by the skin of their teeth, one hero is ready to answer any call within earshot. The hero Westview always deserved, but it didn't need. Get ready for a bad hair day, because some bunny's gonna pay. Hopping onto Disney Plus in January 2029, it's Senor Scratchy. What the fuck? That gag phone hasn't rung in at least 10 videos. Hello? What do you mean production's already delayed? Why this time? 92 paternity suits! Tell him to keep it in his fur next time. Picking up right where we left off, Agatha is scrambling to get the fuck out of Dodge. Just as she's about to leave, Flamer decides he's no longer interested in BDSM and says the safety word.
Take me to Witch's Road.
After being denied his request, he then proceeds to try and convince Agatha that she should allow him to tag along by telling her that he's an obsessive stalker.
Confession, I know an egregious amount about you. That's why I saved you from the spell you were under.
This of course triggers her ego and she inquires what he truly wants.
Power is what I'm missing. Sounds like it's what you're missing too.
After thinking it over, she decides to allow him to join her. Because this is what Disney thinks female empowerment is, I guess. Giving into a guy who won't listen to no and threatens to stalk you. Exactly what message is this girl power gay witch show supposed to be giving us, Marvel? And by the way, what is this kid's name even?
Who are you?
My name is...
Huh?
Say again.
Well, I guess lucky for you guys, I rarely use real names anyway. They head out to assemble a coven because this is the MCU and that's really all they know how to do anymore is put together teams. And just in case you were in desperate need of a reminder that this is indeed connected to the once great hype train, the word assemblers are sure to have her walk right past Wanda's old house. This show is very fucking subtle, ain't it? And to continue in that vein, one scene later they decide that they really need to drive home that Flamer is gay by having his boyfriend call randomly. Which seems to only serve the purpose of confirming to the audience that this Liberace-level homo swings from the other side of the plate. But I mean, just look at him, was there any doubt? He looks like his first words right after he was born were, "I just came out of the vagina and I ain't never going back." Anyway, seeing as how Agatha's coven died out years ago because she killed them, they have no option but to form a new one, which I'm sure has some extremely complicated rules.
Wherever you are, a coven there shall be.
Okay, but what does that actually mean?
Any 3-mile radius, there will be a collection of witchy enough people to form a coven.
Wait a minute! So you're telling me that this complex society of witches just randomly forms covens with whatever useless hags happen to be around? Seriously? This might be the dumbest team formation rule set I've ever heard of. Marvel isn't exactly known for its complicated pledge processes. I mean, groups like the X-Men and Eternals just need you to be born a certain way. And with the Avengers, by the time Endgame rolled around, they were just accepting any waste of space that happened to walk in the room.
Where's Fury?
But this takes the cake in terms of laziness. It's the Super Squad version of Tinder. Just swipe right if you want to join this secret society. Also, witchy enough? What is that bullshit? Does that mean anyone who displays a talent that might be considered slightly rare just gets in? Could you imagine being recruited to save the world by Captain America because you're double-jointed? Anyway, I wonder what the first stop is on our journey to gather the world's okayest set of witches.
You think there's a real witch in there?
Okay. So I guess every strip mall in America contains a potential coven member. In order to test her legitimacy, Agatha and Flamer pay for a reading under a completely believable guise.
His daddy recently passed, and we miss him something awful. What is top of mind is the location of some gold bars he may or may not have buried.
After moaning Myrtle here proves that she's legit.
You've been under the influence of another. Someone you hurt. It's not the first time your witchkin betrayed you.
She refuses to join because of Agatha's history.
I didn't read your fortune. I read your reputation. Witches like you are the reason people think we poison apples and steal children and eat babies.
Then she has some sort of schizoid embolism. Just as they're about to be kicked out, Agatha does the thing where she says the thing.
I'm gonna walk the road.
And it immediately makes a character do what they just said they weren't going to. Okay, honest question here. When the word assemblers use this tactic, do they truly believe that the characters wouldn't be smart enough to lead with this obvious game changer? I mean, it literally worked on Agatha earlier this episode. In this instance, it triggers Moaning Myrtle's suspicion that Agatha is just up to her old power-stealing tricks again.
What, you turned around and steal my power?
But Agatha reassures her that she won't.
I can't steal your magic. Unless you blast me with it.
Myrtle then has another psychic orgasm and hands over a list of 4 names.
Looks like you've got your coven. Leave me out of it.
You're on here.
Is this bitch blind? She was literally just staring at the list. Her extreme farsightedness aside, she sort of reluctantly agrees and Agatha and Flamer move on to their next target.
Taste. I'm fresh out of marbles and my pelvic floor is all over the place. Wanna go splitsies on one? Sisterhood of the Traveling Kegels?
This occasion, Agatha doesn't waste time and immediately uses the walking the road line on Jada Pinkett Smith here.
I need a potion, Sky. We're gonna walk the road.
Much like Myrtle, Jada's not interested in the slightest, which is already showing just how repetitive this show is. It's not until Flamer essentially extorts Jada by bringing up her legal troubles that she agrees to accompany them.
If you value your freedom, join us here. 2 down, 2 to go.
Is it just me, or are these definitely not gonna do it moments becoming easier? In what might be the most out of place but slickest transition I've ever seen, our duo is in the mall staking out their next member. Let me guess, she's gonna initially turn them down, right?
She's a blood witch.
Her mom was a witch, and also a famous goddess of rock.
Lorna Wu.
It turns out the daughter of the most legendary badass rocker chick witch of all time has the incredibly thrilling job of shrink prevention.
I think women know about shrinkage. How do women know about shrinkage?
After getting her fired for assault, she too refuses to join them.
Oh, there's a fucking surprise.
Which is something I'm sure will stick, and they won't all just eventually join anyway.
We're putting the band back together.
Flamer and Agatha head back to her house, and she comes to the realization she can't hear him anytime he tries to explain who he is. Except for the fact that he's gay, because that's super important to the story for some reason. And wouldn't you know it, the whole group shows up after all, just like the legend said. But as Jada Pinkett Bitch points out,
where's our green witch? Wake thy power, earthly.
Agatha tries to convince them that they don't really need one, but even Flamer isn't buying that shit.
What was their last name?
But as it turns out, there wasn't actually a name, it was...
A black heart.
That's because you used a black pen.
Agatha comes up with a contingency plan, which basically boils down to hastily going out onto the street where she encounters Kitty Foreman, who happens to be gardening, and once happened to be named Ms. Hart when Wanda controlled the town.
Your grief is poisoning us.
No, stop.
Please, let us go.
That's awfully convenient, wouldn't you say? By the way, I'd love to point out how everyone in this town is just surprisingly cavalier after being held captive in a mental prison against their will.
Mrs. Hart was what Wanda, granted me, you know.
After some inane chatter, Agatha finally tries to recruit the unsuspecting, friendless suburban widow into her coven.
Fluffy azaleas.
So,
Yeah,
I was just wondering if you'd like to come to a little party I'm having tonight.
And she agrees because she has no idea what the fuck is even happening.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been to a party since Mr. Davis passed.
With all the bitch-like beings officially delivered from Temu, Agatha dismisses Flamer, and then the rest proceed to do the runtime pad of all runtime pads, as they sing the Witch's Ballad for nearly 4 straight minutes.
Through many miles of tricks and trials, we'll wander high and low.
While that poorly delivered a cappella is going on, Flamer notices that outside a group of Ringu rejects has gathered and he attempts to barricade the house. Meanwhile, in the basement, the ballad fails and the door to the road doesn't appear. Agatha then tries to goad the rest of the coven into attacking her so she can absorb their power, which might have worked had she not told one of them exactly what her one weakness was. But then just as the rejects break in and almost get to them, the door appears and they escape just like every cliche you've ever seen. When Loosey left the big city for suburban New Jersey, she thought her demons were in the back of her gaping closet. But she never expected her reputation to follow her here.
Sisterhood of the Traveling Kegels?
And now she'll do anything to prevent her floppy secrets from being exposed. From the intimacy coordinator of Agatha All Along and Senor Scratchy comes a tale loosely based on a true story. Coming fall of 2031, be prepared to explore the deepest parts of yourself. It's Juicy Loosey, throwing a hot dog down a hallway on Disney Plus soon. We rejoin our, heroes? I'm not even really sure if you can call them that. I mean, Agatha Harkness is literally a villain, and she recruited a con artist, a lawsuit magnate, a mall cop who was fired for assault, and Kitty Foreman, who honestly is just a delight in everything and doesn't deserve this kind of treatment.
I am flying right off the handle.
Well, whatever we call our group of walking cliches, they are officially on the Witch's Road, a place where a coven must face trials in order to attain that which they want most. And it would seem that the first trial is to maintain an audience despite being middle-aged women who are constantly bickering.
Are we gonna ignore the fact that something just chased us down here?
Chased Agatha.
It is high time we involve the local authorities.
Well, whoever she is, she has no business on the road.
They are all extremely skeptical as to whether or not they will actually achieve anything, considering the majority of them don't even have powers. We already know about Agatha, and clearly Kitty isn't even a witch, but also Jada Pinkett Bitch is spellbound, so effectively 50% of them are regular humans. And the remaining half have severe limitations. In an attempt to put them at ease, Flamer suggests,
there's always analog magic. Labor-intensive, manual acts of magic.
Did he just pitch manual labor to middle-aged suburban cat ladies? That might be the funniest thing in this show so far, and it wasn't even supposed to be a joke. He'd have better odds of convincing the critical drinker that his liver is worth preserving. The coven of bitches then start to question his value and what he even brings to the table.
Again, who are you?
Myrtle then identifies that he has a sigil placed on him, which is blocking the bitches from hearing things like his name.
A sigil is a redaction spell that hides something.
Agatha decides that that's a problem for later. Because why worry about a self-proclaimed stalker with a mysterious spell on him and no identification? But she's utterly focused on the real prize at the end of the road. Her power. Unfortunately, she then realizes that Kitty has chosen now to up and vanish.
I mean, if you take your eyes off of her for 2 seconds.
Turns out, like any sane person, she's trying to flee from these annoying bitches but can't find a way out. As she stops to collect herself, the ground starts to eat her, and not in the good way. This because of the extremely unclear rules that Agatha has failed to explain to this poor woman.
Well, I thought that this was pretty obvious, but do not step off the road.
Might I remind you, Kitty was tricked into coming here under the guise of a party. How the fuck is she supposed to know that the ground is carnivorous? She didn't even know the song from episode 2.
Am I supposed to know this song?
As they continue to squabble, a house randomly appears out of nowhere. Agatha tells them to shut the fuck up, stop asking questions, and just trust her, as if she wasn't the most untrustworthy bitch in the entire world. Despite the better judgment of 2/3 of them,
maybe this is the end.
That would be such a bummer.
Agatha enters the house and everyone is suddenly in a goddamn Glade commercial. As they admire their newfound outfits, Agatha and Mall Cop realize that much like P. Diddy's house, the doors can't be opened from the inside.
Jesus.
In this instance, it's because the first trial has begun.
My age has value. I'm no fun alone.
Hey!
I mess with your mind. My tricks are well known.
And as they all attempt to figure out this banger of a riddle, Kitty just happens upon the answer. Did they seriously make the answer for these Karens the only thing that comes more naturally to them than asking for the manager? Flamer goes to grab a corkscrew and is joined by Jada Pinkett, who takes away any doubt in our mind that this kid is indeed connected to Agatha.
Did you know she traded her own child for the Book of the Damned? I doubt she'd even recognize her own son if he showed up at her doorstep.
But then again, he's also supposed to be Wiccan, who is a reincarnation of Wanda and Vision's son, so we likely know more than the word assemblers at this point. Pouring a glass for everyone in the coven, Kitty immediately downs hers.
I have had a very hard day. Do not judge me.
Trust me, after watching this show, I empathize. This triggers a 30-minute timer. I've got to say, if the trial is to finish off a bottle of red in a half hour, that's truly the definition of easy mode. I guess at least the word assemblers understand the audience that they think they're trying to play to. Flamer asks Mall Cop about her tattoo, which she gets very defensive about.
Really like your tattoo. Where'd you get it?
Nowhere.
She then immediately tells him anyway.
Got it in Colorado.
Because that seems to be how this show goes. People insist that they won't do something, and then for no reason whatsoever, they just do it nevertheless. As they sit around and complain about life,
And you know, I blame Halloween. Do you see any pointy hats in here?
Kitty randomly blows up like she has a peanut allergy, followed by the rest of them.
We've been poisoned.
Really? You think? I mean, you just drank a fucking bottle of Spanish Red left for you by no one in Baba Yaga's house on the goddamn evil road. What did you assume was going to happen here? Anyway, the swelling subsides quickly and Jada Pinkett identifies it as Alewife's revenge, which comes with a myriad of symptoms.
Next is dizziness, delirium, loss of motor function.
So basically what all poisons do then? And they come to the realization that Agatha didn't drink it.
She didn't drink the poison. You can't cheat, Agatha.
But like any good group of harpies, they just nag her into submission.
He didn't drink. He's not in the coven, and he's underage.
Fine. Then I will.
No!
Jada starts listing off the insanely specific things she needs to create the antidote.
I need frankincense and the gut of a eusocial insect.
They then run around the house trying to find said ingredients while having hallucinations, which amounts to them seeing people that treated them like shit in the past for about 10 seconds. So not really a big deal. Hell, we all have that bully from high school that if we encounter them today are losing their fucking teeth. But other than them being slightly scared by shit, nothing really happens. This is a total missed opportunity to develop these characters relatively early by diving into their pasts, rather than setting up random mystery boxes that 80% of the audience won't make it to the point where they get opened. Just as they find all the necessary items, they realize they are now under the ocean, because sure, why not? They work on brewing the antidote, which apparently doesn't require that they actually remove shit from bottles even.
All natural or not, Jen?
Drop it in.
I knew it.
when Agatha's hallucination finally kicks in. That afterthought lasts for about 6 seconds, and we go right back to this extremely strange version of the Food Network.
Wait. Now.
For some reason, the antidote doesn't work, and Jada has a panic attack until she realizes they need the blood of an unpoisoned, which makes it highly convenient that one of the members just happened to be under the age of 21. Because, you know, of all the morals that Disney chooses to ignore, underage alcohol consumption is where they draw the fucking line.
Thanks for being underage.
Getting everyone to drink at the last second, their exit opens up through the oven, which means they should have been in the kitchen all along. Just as the house floods and they all escape down a fucking water slide, only to find out that the most likable member of the cast is dead.
Sharon's dead.
Who's Sharon?
Seriously, what did this woman do to deserve this? I believe the most important question that can be asked about this show is, who was this even made for? After watching 3 episodes, I can only assume that the target demographic is bi-curious wine moms who loved Hocus Pocus and Charmed growing up, which is a hyper-specific market to try and tap into, especially when you barely advertise. Considering the pitch to this show seems to have been, people really like that meme song from a few years ago.
She's insidious.
You'd think leaning heavily into that would have been obvious for anyone in the marketing department. But apparently that division is in a room that still has lead-based paint, because they didn't even have the brain capacity enough to use that song for the intro. No, instead they opted to forego the one thing that may have gotten them the slightest amount of brand recognition in favor of actively promoting this as the gayest thing yet.
It better be.
Because we all saw just how well that went last time. By the way, this is tracking in that very same direction, seeing as how this opened up to even lower viewing figures. Because people at least cared enough about Acolyte to hate watch it. When compared to the marketing of its contemporaries, The Acolyte and Rings of Power, it's almost as if Disney wanted this to fly under the radar. Clearly, I'm a person who keeps up with the latest releases, and I forgot it was even coming out. The only reason I even vaguely remembered was because of the hilarious saga of publicly renaming it not once, not twice, but 3 times. I'm not exactly a PR specialist, but I think it's fairly evident that Disney has officially lost sight of who they make their products for. Rather than appeasing the existing fan bases which used to print cash for them, they are constantly chasing these mythical audiences that simply don't exist, which is burning both money and bridges for them along the way. And yet, strangely, this is a fate they seem content with. It's truly amazing, in the year 2024, Disney has pulled off seemingly the impossible. They took 2 of the largest male nerd brands in history, added lesbian witches, and somehow lost fans. And if that's not enough to convince you that Agatha just wasn't made for you all along, I'm not sure anything I could possibly say would do the trick.